There are certain players who are pure ballers with very rich CVs, but they somehow never get their flowers for some reason. Today, we're going to talk about those guys. Step into the 18-yard box as we look at 5 of the most underrated players in football history. We'll start with Sergio Busquets. This guy is one of the greatest defensive midfielders the game has ever seen, but he just never got his flowers. He's great at intercepting balls, breaking up attacks, distributing, passing, putting in tackles, starting attacks, and also pulling off the most intricate dribbles in the tightest of spaces. Many top coaches have had only the best things to say about Busquets. World Cup winning Spain coach Vicente del Bosque famously said, "If you watch the whole game, you won't see Busquets, but watch Busquets and you'll see the whole game." That quote right there sums up Busquets perfectly. He was often ignored because he remained in the shadows and did his job perfectly. He won the World Cup, Euros, and multiple Champions Leagues as a major player and starter, but he never once got into the FIFA FIFPro World 11. That was how underrated Busquets was. But years after he left Barcelona, they're still struggling to replace him. And I can bet that Thomas Müller will also be greatly missed when he finally leaves Bayern Munich. He is so good, but because many people don't really understand his role, they tend to underrate him. He is not a striker, a winger, or midfielder. But what Müller does, nobody else can do up to that level. He is the supreme space interpreter, this guy. Müller has won the World Cup, 2 Champions Leagues, numerous league titles, a World Cup Golden Boot, Silver Boot, and Silver Ball. He has also played in 4 Champions League finals, and he ended his international career just 6 goals behind the all-time World Cup goal-scoring record. Müller has played different positions throughout his career. He can do a really good job as a centre forward, second striker, winger, attacking midfielder, false 9, and even as a box-to-box midfielder. But even with how valuable and productive he has been all his career, Müller was never named in the FIFA FIFPro World 11. In fact, he was only named Bayern Munich Player of the Season once in 17 years. He is heavily underrated. A player who certainly belongs on this list is Keylor Navas. This guy was never really appreciated for how good he was. He helped Real Madrid three-peat the Champions League, but did not get his flowers for it once. Madrid wanted to sell him off in 2015 in order to get De Gea, but the infamous fax incident happened, which forced Navas to remain at the club. He then went on to help them dominate Europe. And he wasn't just in goal, he was good while in goal. He became the first Madrid goalkeeper to not concede in his first 6 Champions League games. In the 2015-16 Champions League campaign, he kept 9 clean sheets in 12 games, conceding just 3 goals all tournament. But guess what? After putting up such a performance and winning the Champions League, he was snubbed for the FIFA FIFPro World 11. Now, even after helping them three-peat the Champions League, Madrid disposed of Navas after getting Courtois. And in fact, fans failed to recognize him as one of the greatest keepers in the club's history, even though they mentioned Courtois in those conversations. Even at PSG, Navas was still underrated. They relegated him to second choice when Donnarumma came in and even loaned him out to relegation-threatened Nottingham Forest. Severely underrated player. Another super underrated player is Roberto Firmino. This guy never got credit for the role he played at Liverpool. He was the glue that held that famous attacking trio, and he played his role so perfectly, which allowed the wingers, Mane and Salah, to shine. With how underrated Firmino is, you might forget that he is the highest-scoring Brazilian in the entire history of the Premier League. Another former Premier League striker who is heavily underrated is Olivier Giroud. The Frenchman has a very impressive CV, but he does not have the reputation to match. This guy has won league titles in 2 of the top 5 leagues in Europe, has finished as top scorer in the Ligue 1 and Europa League, has won the Champions League, World Cup, Europa League, Puskas Award, World Cup Bronze Boot, Euros Bronze Boot, and he even retired from international football as France's all-time top scorer. But somehow, Giroud's name never seems to come up when people talk about the best strikers of his generation. The man is always heavily disrespected and is easily one of the most underrated players of all time. Are there more players you think are heavily underrated? Feel free to give me more names in the comments.